All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever been in a room where everyone is speaking English, but it feels like you're speaking completely different languages? It's incredibly frustrating, right? Especially when the stakes are high. You've got two teams, a shared goal, a common language, and yet you're getting absolutely nowhere. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on exactly why that happens. So picture this. A high-stakes business negotiation is underway. On one side, you have a team that's super direct, They lay out their terms, they're pushing for a quick decision. It's all about, let's get to the point. But on the other side, it's a totally different story. That team is more reserved. They're asking about your family, they're focused on building a relationship, and they're avoiding any kind of direct conflict. It honestly feels like they're playing two completely different games with two completely different rulebooks. And that really brings us to the core question here. Why? Why do so many of these deals just fall apart? It's not usually about the numbers on the spreadsheet. It's about a massive misunderstanding of what's even happening in the room. And the answer, as you've probably guessed, isn't in the fine print of the contract. It's buried deep in the culture. I mean, just look at the surface-level contrast between a typical American and Chinese approach. It's pretty stark. American negotiators, they often lean into this assertive, almost adversarial style. It's competitive, it's very direct, and it's really focused on a win-lose outcome. The goal is the deal, period. Now, the Chinese style, it's often non-confrontational, very indirect. The main goal isn't just signing the papers. It's about maintaining harmony and building a relationship for the long haul. But why are they so different? To get that, we've got to look under the hood at the cultural code that's running in the background. So let's start with the American side of that table. There is this incredibly powerful cultural force at play here, one that really shapes how Americans are taught to interact, basically from birth. And it's something called the extrovert ideal. The author Susan Cain just nails it with this quote. In modern American culture, there's this deep, deep belief that the ideal person, well, they're outgoing, they're assertive, and they're totally comfortable being the center of attention. This isn't just, a slight preference, it's a full-blown ideal that we're all pushed to live up to. And it has a huge impact on how we act in a professional setting. And you see this ideal in action everywhere. I mean, get this. In the US, studies have actually shown that we subconsciously think fast talkers are more competent. The people who speak up the most in meetings are seen as leaders, even if their ideas aren't any better. We're constantly told to build our personal brand and sell ourselves. This creates a business culture where being assertive and loud isn't just a personality type, it's a strategy for success. And what's really fascinating is that it wasn't always like this. The historian Warren Sussman, he documented this huge cultural shift. Back in the 19th century, America had what he called a culture of character. Virtues like integrity, duty, honor, that's what mattered. But then, in the 20th century, as big cities and corporations grew, we shifted to a culture of personality. Suddenly, the focus wasn't on your inner moral compass, but on how you came across to others, being magnetic, fascinating, dominant. That shift is the very foundation of the extrovert ideal. Okay, now let's flip over to the other side of the table. The Chinese approach to negotiation is guided by a set of cultural principles that are, in so many ways, the polar opposite of that extrovert ideal. And at the very heart of it all is the principle of harmony. It really all begins with a concept called Guanxi. Now, this is so much more than just networking. Guanxi is this complex web of personal relationships that you have, and it's built on deep trust and mutual obligations. See, business isn't done with strangers, it's done with people inside your Guanxi. And that's why that whole relationship building phase, the part an American might dismiss as just small talk, is actually the most important part of the entire negotiation. And tied directly to Guanxi is Mianzi, which translates to face. Think of face as your social currency. It's your reputation, your prestige, your standing within your network. And causing someone to lose face by, say, embarrassing them, directly proving them wrong, or putting them on the spot is a huge deal. It can shatter that harmony we talked about and kill a negotiation instantly. So preserving face, for both you and for them, is absolutely critical. And what's holding both of these ideas up? It's the principle of collectivism. So where American culture celebrates the individual, the self-made man, Chinese culture is deeply collectivistic. The goals and the health of the group, whether that's your family or your company, always come before the wants of any single person. The negotiator at the table isn't just speaking for themselves. They are an ambassador for their entire group. Now, I know these concepts can feel a little abstract, a little fuzzy, But what if I told you we could actually measure these differences? That we can see this cultural gap not just in anecdotes, but in cold, hard data? So this is from Geert Hofstede's famous research on cultural dimensions. Just take a look at these scores. Power distance, that's about how much a culture accepts hierarchy. China's way up at 80, the US is much lower at 40. Long-term orientation, a focus on the future, again, a huge gap. But the real story, the number that explains almost everything, is that one right there, in the middle. And this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the scale of individualism, the United States scores a massive 91, one of the highest scores on the entire planet. And China? China scores a 20. That is an enormous 71-point gap. This single data point is the key that unlocks this entire puzzle. Because this means the two sides aren't just using different strategies. They are literally operating from different worldviews. One culture is built around the success and the autonomy of the individual, the I. The other is built around the harmony and the obligations of the group, the we. And when I meets we at a negotiating table and neither one understands this fundamental difference, well, conflict is pretty much guaranteed. So what do we do about this? How in the world do we bridge a gap that wide? Well, it actually starts with throwing out a rule that we have all been taught since we were kids and adopting a much better one. We all know the golden rule, right? Treat others as you want to be treated. The problem is, that rule has a huge flaw. It assumes the other person wants what you want. It assumes you're both running the same cultural software. The platinum rule is the essential upgrade. Treat people the way they want to be treated. It forces you to stop, to listen, and to actually try to see the world from their point of view. And putting this into practice is actually pretty simple. First, you have to stop assuming that your way of doing things is the normal way. It's not. Second, you just observe and learn. What do they seem to value? Is it harmony, directness, the relationship? Third, you adapt your style. If they value relationship, then you need to invest time in it. If they avoid confrontation, find a more indirect way to make your point. And finally, all of this builds trust. It shows you respect them enough to learn their rules. This isn't about being fake, it's about being smart and effective. So in the end, it all boils down to this one very powerful question. The next time you find yourself trying to communicate across any kind of cultural gap, just ask yourself, am I playing my game by my rules and just expecting them to figure it out? Or am I smart enough to learn their rules and play the game on their field? The answer to that question could be the difference between a successful deal and a total deal breaker.